Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning, and welcome to For the Record. Today is Wednesday, the 11th day of April, 2018. I trust that everyone had an enjoyable, restful evening. We know that traffic on the roads has picked up considerably now that schools have resumed, classes have resumed, so we know it's pretty busy on the roads as well. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. You know that it is normally that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. If you don't like to talk on the telephone, email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. You can also send us a WhatsApp. You can also send us a voice message or a text message on our WhatsApp number. That WhatsApp number is 925-3261. I will repeat that number, 925-3261. You send us a voice note or a text message. The voice note will be played over the air. Don't expect us to answer that number. We won't be answering that number, but we encourage you to use that as a means of communicating with us as well. Before I introduce my guests this morning, I just want to comment on some of the local news that has been circulating, and one in particular. Most of you would have heard or read about the Cuban national who went missing off a cruise ship, an employee on a cruise ship here in the Cayman Islands, never returned to the vessel when it was due to sail. Notices were alerts were issued for that person. Eventually, the person was located. It seems as if the wheels of justice moved extremely quickly. That person went to court, was charged, went to court, was sentenced. Unfortunately, no one else was arrested or charged so far. But the story that I have read and what seems to have transpired in the courts was that the woman was distressed because of situations on board the vessel as well as situations in her native country. And as a result of being depressed and everything, she met some persons who tried to assist her, found lodgings for her, put her up. She doesn't know who those persons were. They only assisted her, moved her from one location to the other. It's like what those old people would talk about. It sounded like a cock and anna story. It sounded like a cock and anna story. And I hope that the authorities don't just simply buy that, but try to find those persons, locate those persons, identify those persons who assisted this individual, and bring charges against those as well. You may say, well, why is he being so harsh? They found her, they located her. Why is he being so harsh? The reason is, it seems as if that cruise vessel makes regular stops to the Cayman Islands. It seems as if many crew members on board that vessel are Cuban nationals. We know the situation with Cuba. We know the situation with Cuban nationals. If we do not put our feet down and set the example, now you can expect to get more and more of it happening. You can expect to see more and more of it happening as long as one person is successful. Then, to take the story a little further, it seems as if her lawyer, when she was sentenced to 3 months imprisonment, I believe it was, and with deportation being recommended, the lawyer then asks whether or not that person could be housed at the detention center where the other Cuban refugees are kept. That person is not a refugee, not an economic migrant. They're an illegal entrant into the Cayman Islands because they failed to leave when they were supposed to leave. Not even overstaying, because as a crew member, they were allowed to come on shore, but weren't given any specific time, because crew members are afforded certain privileges as crew members based on our international treaties and obligations. So to have the gall then to ask for that person to be housed with the Cuban refugees, you're asking for special privileges for that person to be treated differently than any other criminal who has been charged and found guilty of a criminal offense. So, again, it is important that the authorities investigate this further, because that person had to have assistance from someone. I don't think it was just happenstance that that person met someone on the road because they were depressed because of their situation, and all of a sudden that person takes them and gives them shelter. No, it's more than that. Let's get to the root of it. Let's find those persons who assisted them and charge them. We need to set a clear example. So with that is my little pet peeve for the morning. Have more as well, but because my guest is in the studio with me, I can't go on with any more of those for this now. But today being Wednesday, it is one of the Wednesdays that we have Mr. Kenneth Bryan on the show with us. Of course, Mr. Kenneth Bryan is the member of our Legislative Assembly who represents Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. So without any further ado, I will say good morning, Mr. Bryan, and welcome back to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Connor. Thank you for allowing me to be on the show again. And I want to say good morning to the listening audience who will eventually probably listen to this by streaming on TV, as well as who are watching it live now or listening to it live on radio. Special good morning to all the people in Cayman Brac. You know, I got a Braca blood inside of me, so I have to give them a shout out. Good morning to everybody here in Cayman, and particularly my constituents in Georgetown Central. I hope you guys are having a lovely morning so far, and I may wish that God blesses you for a lovely day. So I'm on today. This is my normal every other Wednesday show. So I just want to touch base with everybody and tell everybody where things are at. I know that some people have probably heard some other news about matters that I'm facing in the community and things that are happening. So the last time we spoke, there's a few things that have developed since then, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about each one of those, and then we can take some calls. I don't want to over talk people this morning. I want to hear more from the community.
Yes.
So one of the first things that happened since the last show was the meeting with the new governor.
Okay. Yes.
And I'm pleased to say that that went very well. We spoke for over an hour and a half and talked about a lot of the issues that are happening in the Cayman Islands. And we had I gave him my breakdown of concerns in Cayman and the points that we went over were community level stuff, national level, and global level. So I said to him on a constituency level that crime and safety was a concern for persons in Georgetown Central, obviously cost of living, employment for Caymanians. And I told him that was the main topics for constituency level. And on the national level, foreclosures, affordable health care for all was another national thing. Education, which everybody knows, education will continue to be term by term a focus for any administration and any representative. One of the other things that I said that is important to me is the unity amongst all Caymanians, because I think that we need to be better at our unity approach so we can be a stronger country. Affordable housing, I think, was another element. I told him that nationally is an issue because Caymanians need to be able to have more affordable housing. I think that's another contributing factor to the foreclosures. And better succession planning in private sector for Caymanians as well as in government. So that was the national level issues that we spoke about. And the global level, I said that, we would like to make sure that our UK relationship is strong and that a commitment to each other, that commitment is there, because I know I heard his speeches and stuff like that, and he seems to be rather supportive of the Caymanian focus and concerns rather than just being the representative of the UK. So he sold that picture, and I'm glad because most times when a governor comes, their focus is, I'm here to represent the UK. I think he has a good, fair balance of that, he's here to make the people of the Cayman Islands better, but at the same time do his job. He has a good balance of that. So we spoke about that. I always said to him that another thing from a global perspective is that Cayman's educational understanding of the Commonwealth and what our role is in it, because obviously the changes with Brexit, we're going to have a different layout now. The environment within the Commonwealth will change, particularly with trade and membership and possibly even travel amongst the Commonwealth states. I think that particularly with that last conference that I went to in the UK, it gave me a better appreciation for the family called the Commonwealth and the potential opportunities that are there. And I think that, OC, now I know you are more aware of the value of the Commonwealth and what it means, but I don't see a lot of civic education amongst the younger generation of the understanding of the Commonwealth and what relationship that we have and why it's called the Commonwealth. We have common things to embrace, and it connects us together, and there's so many great opportunities there for us to venture into. So I'm looking forward to that. So I want to do some more education in Cayman. I don't know he can assist with that, but he agreed with me in that respect.
Well, some in our generation may think that they want to rename in the Commonwealth and say that it's not a Commonwealth anymore, it's the Common Poor.
You're probably right about that.
Because it was a Commonwealth when the UK had control over everything, and including the economies and the natural resources, of those countries.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess it's the common part of it that is attaching us, not the wealth anymore.
Not the wealth.
The other three things that we spoke about from the global level was our relationship to the environment. I know that he's a big champion for the environment, and so am I. But we which I was so happy about was we went over the fact that the environment is important, but the balance of protecting the environment, but also giving opportunities for development, for success, for opportunities for Caymanians to survive, whether through work and growth for the economy, was there. So we both agreed that we're not totally tree huggers, but we want to protect the environment as much as we can, as long as it doesn't get in the way of opportunity for Caymanians. So that was a good fessing out. The other element was our international reputation, that Cayman is still the best place in the world from a tourism perspective. We're honest and safe, and obviously protecting our name from the financial perspective, because obviously we're constantly under attack. And the last thing was finding more pillars of income for the government. So we spoke of those things from the international level. So we spoke for about an hour and a half, and that went well, and I was pleased with the conversations, and things are moving well. I think that one of his big things for me was my top thing on the list, which was crime and safety. my constituents in my area have been asking to say, Kenneth, we want something done about the crime and how things look around our community and stuff. Obviously, I'm not in control of the police, but I can put the pressure on in the necessary places to say my constituents want this done. So he's given me a commitment. So all those who are involved in criminal activity expect some more pressure from the police in that respect. He's given that commitment.
Okay, we're going to take a commercial break. Now, when we return, the conversation will continue with MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Before we went to the commercial break, he was talking about his meeting with the governor, and included in that meeting, I think, was a walk through some areas of Georgetown as well. I saw in the papers, I saw photographs also of him visiting the fishermen on the waterfront. I think he went to Boose's store as well. But those guys on the waterfront were really excited and pleased that he visited them there and got his hands all dirty and stuff like that with the fish as well. I think that is a good, very, very good PR.
Yes.
As far as it, and we hope and we trust that it isn't just on the occasion of his arriving in the Cayman Islands, but for his tenure, be it 3 years or 4 years, whatever, that he continues to do that as well. And I think based on his personality, he will continue to do that.
Yeah. I mean, we can read so much about an individual by the fact that they were willing to get right down there, and you saw the pictures where he was actually trying to gut the fish, and all of us were blown away because myself and the Honorable France Manderson arranged for him to meet at the waterfront because the tour was happening that day. So they asked each MLA, is there in particular areas you want him to stop? And I really wanted him to come out to the waterfront because you wanted the cultural feel of what was happening. But I totally didn't expect him to. When he got there, he was like, "All right, let's go," and he rolled up his sleeves. And luckily, Mr. Robert, the guy who sells the fish out there, and I think everybody knows
Donald
who
Trump.
Robert. Mr. Donald Trump. He was so prepared. He's like, "All right, Kenneth, I got this big fish here. We're going to make him try to clean that." And I was like, because Robert is obviously excited about trying to get him involved. I thought he was going to be reluctant, but he jumped right in. He's like, "All right, where's the gloves?" And Robert had the gloves ready for him, and he got right down in there, and it was really a special moment. And I think that particularly, you got your senior heads who hang out there, and they won't say much. They'll watch and observe and say, "Yeah, new governor coming now." But you can see the attitude in their faces were changed. Like, what? He grabbing a nice fish and he cleaning. I say, all right, then he's a pretty good guy. So it helped him a lot in respect to his PR, and people see that he is a normal person. Everybody's a normal person, but he's cool enough to get down to the grassroots level and talk with everybody and mingle with everybody. So I respect that, and it tells you a lot about his character. So I'm looking forward to the future. But bearing in mind now, PR is one thing, and like you said, it's about the follow through. So he's talked the talk so far. It's about the action now. So that's, but there's good things to be hopeful for in respect, because he's shown all the great qualities that I think we would want in respect to the role of governor coming forward. So I'm excited about that.
And while the governor is usually much more closely associated with the government, simply because he's a part of it, he's a chair, he chairs cabinet. His offices are in the glass house where all of the ministers are and stuff like that. And his day-to-day working relationship with them is much more frequent than with other members of the Legislative Assembly. But as long as he strives to ensure that balance is there, that the lines of communications are open with the independent members of the Legislative Assembly, lines of communications are open with the opposition, and they feel that whenever they need to, they can reach him, they can talk to him. I think he will have a good relationship with all of the politicians. I
think so. I mean, funny enough, I was talking with another legislator just last night, and I think there was a little bit of people who were upset at the fact that he met with the opposition first. I mean, by the very next day, there was a picture with him meeting with the opposition, and that was unprecedented, But I think that just goes to show you, it doesn't matter who it is. We're going to meet with everybody. So I was pleased about that. He met with me, and he gave me the respect, even though I'm just one single person there. He gave me my own private meeting and talked about the things that were concerning for me and my constituency. And he's done everything right so far in my book. And I am pleased about the future, or the potential future of what he's going to bring. I'm particularly pleased about his background in military, because it brings so much to the notion that that are the plans for the future in respect to a Coast Guard. It also gives much support and advice to him in his role as in charge of the police. I remember, actually, funny enough, this came up in the meeting where he says, the safety thing is a big issue for me, Kenneth. I've already given the new commissioner 7 things on the list. I think he's not going to like me by the end of the week. so he was rather funny about it, but he's already on the go. And we saw in the paper, I think Monday,
National Security Council yesterday.
Yes. So you can see that this is about getting here and start rolling, getting the job done. And believe it or not, over the last 4 years in the last administration, National Security Council only met 8 times. 8 times. And this governor has been here not even a month yet, I think, and he's already meeting with the National Security Council. So I am pleased that we have a governor who's in charge of policing in this country, who's going to be taking it seriously, and he's already done all the actions to show that he's taking that approach. So I think that, like I said, all those involved in criminality, beware, because we have a governor who, ultimately, remember now, the politicians don't have control over the police. So whoever does have that responsibility, which is the governor, has to take it seriously. And I don't think the last one did as much as she could have done as what I think is going to be done by this police, this governor.
Okay, not wanting you to take any tales out of school or anything, but did you get any inkling in terms of his leaning towards additional responsibilities for politicians as far as the police service is concerned, or is he likely to retain the
his control
responsibility for the police and try to exercise or extend the influence of politicians through the National Security Council, as opposed to having a minister with responsibility for internal security?
No, well, we didn't go into depth to that, and I don't think there was any indication in any slight way, inferred or not, that would be something that he would or is planning. I'm not saying that he wouldn't think about that, but I personally think that he's actually embraced the element of him being in control of the police, because, like I said, he has a military background. At least that's what I understand. So security is a big thing for him. So it's not like, say, the previous governor, who don't really come from security background, is coming from a finance background, where she go, okay, well, I think that's okay to give it to a politician, maybe somebody who has come back from police or something like that, right? So I think he's embraced it. So I think there's a smaller chance of him letting go those responsibilities or lessening those responsibilities and passing them on. But obviously we're going to have more influence over the policing strategies and the like that, because I think the intention is to meet at least every 3 months, according to what he said. So we're going to see frequent National Security Council meetings. So and as
long as they prove to be productive,
yes,
and because the feedback that you got from some persons in relation to the activities of the National Security Council was that basically, no decisions were made there. It was just basically a reporting procedure in terms of what was happening. You got reports from the police commissioner, but as far as input was concerned, there wasn't a whole lot of it.
I sense that this governor is not that type.
Okay, folks, we're going to our 8 o'clock news. When we return, the conversation will continue with Mr. Kenneth Bryan, MLA, who represents Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. Please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan. We're talking about the Scranton area. We're talking about the possible acquisition of property in that area, which is now up for sale. Property that, through the generosity of the property owner, the Scranton Committee was able to use that for over a decade. But now it is up for sale, and we're talking about the possibilities of that being acquired.
Yes.
So we'll throw the mic back over to Mr.
Yes.
Kenneth Bryan.
So we were basically saying how far things are, and if government purchases it, what the opportunities are that can happen afterwards. And I'm really excited. I think that the good Lord has made it something potentially negative to turn into a potential positive. I want to clarify for the public's sake that I do believe that previous administrations have tried to acquire this property, but it was not for sale. Mm-hmm. The Honorable Mike Adam had once offered up intentions to purchase, but the property owner wasn't ready at that time. The Honorable Kirk Tibbetts also offered up intentions to purchase, mm-hmm. but the property was not for sale. So now that the opportunity is here, we're all hoping that the government does find the monies. And if OC, this allows me the opportunity to talk about another matter that's semi-related, which is in circumstances in every constituency for representatives, there's always going to be monies needed to do things. Things don't happen for free unless it's labor perspective, where persons in the community come and assist by their hands and stuff. So it's hard to fundraise big lots of money. How many cakes are you going to sell? How many sandwiches are you going to sell, right? So I believe that there should be pots of money, or let me rephrase that, allocations of money available to each member for every budget cycle for them to tap into. And one of the things that was frustrating for me in respect to when I found out this land was for sale is that I predicted exactly this type of scenario was going to happen, where I needed resources to address a matter of concern for people of Georgetown Central. So in my first meeting with the cabinet, I asked them to, before agreeing to the budget, can you please set aside some money in the event of things that need to be addressed in my community, that I can come with my committee to justify the need for it. And obviously based on your approval, so I won't have any access to it without your approval, but at least have it set aside that when something does come up, you don't have to tap into other resources or other departments' money that's already been allocated, and accounted for.
So there's been a budget presentation since your election in May of last year.
Yeah, once I got elected, I appreciate the fact that the premier asked.
Another budget was presented to the LA since then.
Yeah, we had our budget in the 1st of January is the first new budget
for the next 2 years.
For the next 2 years.
Okay.
So the government gave. I respect them so much to say they called all members of opposition to say, come in before we get the budget. What are your priorities, so we can try to factor those in. But they called me and I said, listen, I would like to this sum of money put aside, not for me to have access to or be in control of, but for you to have control of it. And then if something comes up, because remember now we're in a 2-year budget, something can come up in a year that I can't predict right now for you to put the money in. But if you put it off to the side to say, okay, if you need monies, this is what you can tap into. You come to cabinet, you make a presentation and prove to us why you need it. So if we feel it's justified, then we can allocate, whether it's 5,000, 6,000, 70,000, whatever the amount may be. But they didn't take that approach, and I think it's going to continue to be a problem with single-member constituencies moving forward, because every member are going to want to do things in their community, and doing things in your community will cost money. We can't always depend on private sector. We can in most cases, but we can't always do that.
Yep. We have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning, Mr. Bryan.
Good morning, sir.
Just wanted to comment on the idea about acquiring that piece of property there in Georgetown for a park, community park. But sort of look at it in terms of the big picture. I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea. We who have been around for a little longer than some folks will remember when Georgetown used to have a park. It's where the President Legislative Assembly building is.
Princess Royal Park.
The Princess Royal Park. You remember that, O.C.?
Yes, sir.
Right? Well, what has happened is Georgetown has become more and more of, instead of a mixed community of businesses, shops, and homes, it's just a place where all you have is just commercial buildings, commercial enterprises. And so you cannot revitalize Georgetown without having some green places.
Exactly.
Some green spaces, some places where the community can come and it's not just concrete and asphalt. And preserving even a small portion of land like that, especially when it's adjacent to government land, if someone catches the vision, why not expand the entire thing into a reserve for the community, so that we can really see a revitalization of Georgetown? Because it's not just that section that's being sold. You look all along Shedden Road, more and more, all you see are commercial buildings going up on both sides of the road. And so what happens after 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening? Georgetown is basically dead. And more, when it becomes a situation where folks who are getting up in age and they don't have any income because there's no real pension, they will sell their land so they can survive.
Exactly.
And they will move out of Georgetown, go someplace, and we can't blame them. So we have to have a vision of what our capital is going to look like in 5 to 10 years, and we can try to take a page out of Mr. Dart's book to realize that what he developed there, the design of Cayman Bay, is not just a commercial enterprise or a commercial center. It is a mixed community, and we're losing that at Georgetown. And so I want to just congratulate you, Mr. Bryan. I saw it was in the conference this morning also that the government says they're interested in acquiring that, and I appreciate the fact. I hope that's only part of a larger vision to try to revitalize Georgetown, including getting getting a green space. Yes. In the center of Georgetown, right back where the old was it Tower Building was called. I mean, if that could be.
Well, caller, if I can just say something here. Actually, when I was not elected in 2013, but I was a political assistant to the premier, I had an opportunity to be in one of the caucus meetings. Only went to 3 because I wasn't elected, but I got to sit in the back and watch. And I made a suggestion to some of the members. I remember even saying it to the Honorable Premier and the Honorable Mr. Tibbetts, to say that where the tower location is would have been a beautiful place for a green space. But it wasn't taken on. My idea wasn't taken on the basis that it was going to be the holding ground for the development of the dock. Because when you're doing major construction like that, you need a close piece of property for holding ground, and that was one of the reasons why they didn't take on the concept. But I agree with you. We need a green space in Georgetown Central and in Georgetown period in order for us to really give the uplift to Georgetown if we really are committed to this idea. Because I'm concerned that we're not as committed as we would like to say that we are, because there haven't been any movement in respect to the revitalization of Georgetown. But I really agree with you in everything you said so far.
Yeah, and I hope that in addition to that, the piece that can be acquired and maybe simply expanded into whatever the government owns, and we'll see it as something not to build another building or put another parking lot. We've got to have another vision besides turning it into roads and parking lots.
Concrete jungle, yes.
We've got more roads and parking lots now than that well. And actually, I guess not that we need, because we keep adding more cars. Anyway, I just wanted to run that out before you and say thanks for the efforts that are being made by everybody. And I hope to see it as being as only one effort to move us into a much more environmentally conscious.
Yes.
Because you can't be community conscious without being environmentally conscious. Well,
yeah, very true.
That's true.
So thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. We have one more caller. I think we can accommodate that caller before a break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Pearl Bowden.
Good
Well,
morning.
see, you mightn't be familiar with me or used to me, but I knew before you were born. Your mom was my old school teacher.
Okay.
Yes.
I know you, Miss Pearl. I know you. I know you.
It's not a thing, and I don't like talking on the phone and stuff like that and get involved, but I listen to you at all times, all the when Miss Georgia saying, Steve, I listen to you. But this morning, I just got to speak. You know, it grieves me to know that the way people talk about down in here, as I tell them before, it was, I've been here from like 49, 50. I came down in here to live.
Mm-hmm.
And until today, I'm happy living here.
Mm-hmm.
Down in the back here, right to the park, especially as I told them the other night in the meeting, you know, it is something that is like sentimental to me. I was married. I used to live there. My children, my oldest daughter was born there.
Mm-hmm.
It came back. The land came back from Ben Miles, my Miles family anyway. That was his property.
Okay.
But for people to say they're afraid to come down in here, look, everybody think down in here. My house is the last house. Come to the government house.
Mm-hmm.
I can look right on from my porch to the government house. When it was building, I could see everything going on. Well, the bush started to come up now. That is for one why, you know, they keep gardens and, you know, chicken and thing there, that bushy thing can stay down to keep it open onto the little park. Nobody can go in there and drink, and they don't hang out down in there doing drugs. They dare not. Nobody know they can't come in there and do those kind of things. When I hear people talk about, they're afraid to come down in here. Nothing down here afraid. Stillman is there. They cook their food. People come in. Nobody don't trouble there. If it's anything, it's only since they have this bar hang out that they had the bar or whatever. They crime down in there. Put it back down there. Have anybody here, anybody kill anybody down in there.
There are many law-abiding citizens down in there.
Never. We respect people. We love one another. We still share one another. Jean house is my house. Emlyn, Francis, Ramon Yard was the playground for everything. Chica, Warnell, Clark's little son, when, as I tell Dale the other night, I didn't know if he had remembered the day that child said, we got asked Gregory them to make us make them children clean up out there and play. Because they used to play in the yard. Francis Yard was the football team, marble, whatever. If it was a wedding, when I married, I had my reception. Everybody would have big time. We would have dance in the yard.
Yep. And there were times when there were times.
In the evening, you'd hear Jesus say, "That's how," or we would get together. Worry, Smiles, all of them, Janet, and all of them. But you know, people out the area is gone. I'm nearly, I am 80 years old, and I'll soon be gone. But I would hate to see it. But I would love to see that. It would be sad for somebody to come in there and to get that and take up a car part or
Agree.
And my heart goes out. And I thank God for Kenneth that he come in, Alden and Kirk and all of them. They have been there with us. They stood for us. Even McKeever come from West Bay. He come there. Anybody can come. As I tell the policeman, and policemen they know what I tell him. If it's a day they're doing patrol, sometimes it grieves me that I don't see more police up and down. These young boys that come in along the road up there, in the night sit down long there from different parts. When I was younger, I used to work girls home, and I come home and I see those little boys out the road there under the gate. Well, wasn't going to play then. I would come out that and ask them, what are you doing up here? You for not? What are you doing up here? What are you doing up here? You not belong up in here? And especially if it's a person that I know that, like say, just ride him and say, "What I was to see you if you had a son, and I know you, and I know what you stand for, and see them hanging out there with children that sell drugs and things. You think I would? What you doing? I could tell your mother, and you know the children would go off, and nowadays children will stand up and deny your visits, and parents get know that you don't know how to sit there and don't say that to my child. This is why the world gone and the place gone. But those children, when anybody know or somebody know that I know their mother and they know it, and I speak to them, they do have a fault, see them because they got to tell mama.
Yep.
That is the first thing.
Yep.
So that's everything different. I just want to know it. I just call him this morning to make them know. Nobody down in here don't do nobody nothing.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody doing it, and most of the young generation and mix up with one another, and it's not down in the back here because I know I go on wall there and see between me and that child garage, and when I was putting that there, they started to come sit down on it. I just went out there and I said to them, "You see that wall there? I don't want to find nobody sitting at it at any time. Nobody don't hear about that. They can't go there, sit down and smoke and drink and on my wall. No, they don't. They dare not."
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Pearl, for that. We want to thank you for calling in, and I wanted to give you that extra time because you know how to express yourself, and those expressions are genuine expressions coming from you as well. We want to really, really, really thank you very much for that, and we'll talk more about the Scranton area when we come back, because that is like Harlem in New York.
Yes.
That is a cultural center for Georgetowners. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. We have one more caller on hold. We will take that caller as soon as we return from this quick commercial break. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I want to thank again Ms. Pearl for calling in and expressing her views, genuine views, and we want to hear more from people in their communities, talking about their communities, defending their communities, as well as publicizing their cultural heritage and their communities as well. We have another caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Two callers. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I am calling just to express my sympathy to the Millers family in Northside
Okay.
and the Barnes family in Georgetown.
Yes.
One of which was my shipmate, Raymond. A nice guy, always, and I wish his wife and the rest of his family God's blessing. Not only were we shipmates, but we were dialysis patients too.
Wow.
So I know, sure, if it takes others, it'll probably have me too. So my sympathy to all, and thanks to Ms. Ramon for her openness and frankness about the way things are going. And it's and West Bay, we got the problem still with the motorcyclists. You can't get talk to them because they're going too fast. But I'm dreading that they're gonna get killed one of these days or kill somebody else. So I want to appeal to them to stop, think, and listen. What they're fooling with is death, and he won't refuse them. Thanks, OC. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Caller, for that. Next caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Good morning. Good morning, caller. Go right ahead.
Well, I got a question. I will say you might be answered or cannot, but man, does these big business players don't have to donate money to charity?
There is no legal requirement for them to donate money for charity, but you would hope that their conscience would, and many do contribute and donate to charity. Some are publicized. Some ensure that they their faces are plastered over the newspapers and elsewhere. And there are others who do it very quietly, not wanting any recognition, but go about, being good corporate citizens in a quiet way.
I not call the person name, but when I used to represent Cayman in Caribbean cross country, a certain company was sponsoring me, and he was the manager. He said we are legally supposed to support. So more on the buy from us, more we can support the community. That's what we're told by a manager of a certain company in Cayman Islands.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any legal requirement in that regard. There may be conditions, for instance, with companies when business staffing plans and things of that nature.
Scholarships.
Talk about scholarships and things of that nature, but I'm not aware of any legal requirement for contributions to charity.
But this was 91, 92, so that's a long time ago.
A lot of them do it to be in good standing too, for be able to say, we do our part in the community, and it helps them out in their business staffing plans. And I think that should be something that government should always consider, giving them brownie points and considerations for special privileges, especially when they give back to the community. So I want to praise all of those business persons who continue to play their role in the community, because we depend a lot on charity in the Cayman Islands, and there's a lot of good companies out there. So I'm happy to say that.
As a politician now, isn't there wrong in making a law that they should be doing that?
Obligated to do donations?
Do donations. It's a must you do donations. Not if somebody come and beg you for it. And I thought about the company that's making a little $4,000 or $5,000 a month. I thought about these big old companies are making millions and millions of dollars.
I think there is a moral obligation by companies, but I don't think you can demand for them to give to charity. I think there is already a demand of commitment to the growth of Caymanians by way of, if you have more than a certain amount of persons in your company, you have to offer up scholarships, and those scholarships are quite expensive. So you can think of a child going to university for 4 years at $30,000 a year. That's a large commitment by a company. So you're basically giving back to Cayman through a Caymanian of over $120,000. So there's other provisions where we kind of put a mandatory element of giving back to the society, but forcing them to give to non-profit organizations, I think that would be a rather difficult one and unrealistic to expect them to do so. Unfortunately,
the reason why I was asking that, like when you talking about the government need money for, okay, if you need something done to the private school, funds can be, these big people say, okay, we have a certain fund from these companies donate money. We can use that money for anybody that all our elected, 19 elected, even the Alden, as the premier. He said, okay, I need this done and I don't want to take my money to do it. The company donating it. Well, but do you, every time you want something, company, you don't have to beg them or they volunteer does it.
Caller, there's an inherent danger to that to a certain extent.
I was just about to.
Because you don't, you've heard this the saying that he who pays the piper calls the tune, as well.
I don't want none to say something that can put you or Cayman radio station. I just asked the question. If you can answer it, you give me a straight answer.
No, well, it's not. It has nothing to do with putting Radio Cayman or anybody in the problem. What I'm saying to you, caller, is that when someone is obligated to give you money, that they must give it to you, you don't think that they're going to want something in return? Yeah. You don't think that they're going to want to have a say in how things are done?
Yeah, but it's I know they're working hard, but the money is coming from us. So they should at least give something back. Yeah,
the government has various ways of getting money from its corporate citizens in terms of fees and whatever.
Taxes.
What the government decides to do or how the government decides to handle that money is a different thing altogether. They can take that money and they can ring fence it and say it's going to be used for this purpose. Or if a developer wants to come in and build, we say, okay, this is going to be done, but we want you to also give money to enhance the educational facilities in that area or something like that. Yes, you can attach things to approvals that you're doing, but to mandate that you must give to charity, I think that you're going on a slippery slope when you go there. Anyway, caller, thanks very much for that. We have to go to our 9 o'clock news now. Sorry, I have to cut you off there. We have to go to our 9 o'clock headline news. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have one caller still on hold, so back to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, O.C.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning to MLA Kenneth Bryan, Georgia Eubanks here.
Good morning, Miss Georgette.
And I trust that both of you know that they're okay, man. Want to know how your families are doing. I hope they're doing well.
Fine, thanks, and we trust the same for you.
Yes, we're doing quite well. I'm very grateful God gave me another day of life. Mr. Kenneth?
Yes, ma'am.
I've been listening intently to everything you said and to all the people, various people who have called in. And I said it before over the air. I have known the Ramones and the Seymours and all those families in that area ever since I was a very young woman, almost a child. And I respect them, and I can't thank them enough for allowing the people in that area to use that property for, 20 or 25 years. And what concerns me most of all, many dear, precious little children need a special place to go. Why should they be denied a park? If these families were so kind as to let it be used for all those years, and now it is up to our government to purchase it so that it will be able to be used for many years to come by whatever age people, but especially all those precious little children. May God just speak to the hearts and minds of all those concerned, those who are wanting to sell, and those who will try to purchase, that things will work out according to God's will. But I just can't stop thinking about the little children. Thank you all very much, and God bless all. I don't mean one or two, all the people on our free island.
Thank you very much, Miss Georgette. Thank you very much again for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Georgette.
One more caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes. Good morning, O.C.
Morning. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good, thanks.
And good morning to Mr. Bryan.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Yes. O.C., I too would like to extend my condolences to the Miller family in Northside and to the Barnes family in Georgetown. I knew Raymond very well. We grew up
opposite each other, yes.
from them.
Yeah.
And I also remember where they used to have the All Island Sports at Partner Ground.
Mm-hmm.
Raymond came in. Raymond took home the cup that year, 1 year. I can't remember the exact year, but I remember that, He was always quite a nice guy. He was much older, quite a few years older than me, but he was a real nice gentleman, that to grow up with somebody like that, was always hardworking and always very attentive to a lot of young fellows in the area.
And responsible, extremely responsible.
Exactly. And I want to say that, with sympathy to those both families, Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
so much,
caller, for that as well. One of our callers mentioned the article in the Caymanian Compass today. I'm not sure whether or not he indicated what newspaper it was in.
It was Compass.
But it is in there. And I want to concentrate on this article just a little bit, just to say a few things about it. Number one, and you mentioned this also, Mr. Brian, the realtor who is involved in the sale, and I don't know who the realtor is, and even if I knew, I wouldn't mention it on the show. But obviously, is looking for the best deal for their client.
Yes.
So that's number one. I question what I question is that if government, based on this article, that government had made overtures in the past about acquiring the property, and not the owner not wanting to sell at that point in time, why the choice of putting it on the market as opposed to approaching government and giving them the first right of refusal based on the fact that the government had expressed an interest in that property before. I also want to point out that and we say this earlier as well, that any commercial entity who has an interest in this other than for preserving it for that community, I don't want to say anything to affect the sale of the property at all, but I would say, leave it alone, let the government work it out. Yeah. I don't think that there's a need for that for sale sign to be up there, because we know that there's interest in the property. I don't think that there's a need for that. Whomever that realtor is, they're going to get their commission. They're going to, we would hope that they get, and trust that they get fair market value for that property, as opposed to pitting one purchaser against the other to see how high they can get it. And I would hope that whomever the realtor is, that they have that sense of community and spirit as well to ensure that that happens. The other thing that I'm going to address is that this article wants to bring out the contention between you and the Premier. And I want to say that we want to steer away from that, because agreed. What is of ultimate importance is the people of the park and the people of that area, in terms of acquiring it. And then finally, even though I will have the mic for the end of the show, I want to say that area, the Scranton area, one time we used to call it Parker's Digging. There was also a pejorative term that was used for that area, and I won't use it because in this day and age, you can't use that. Those days, people used to use it, but you can't use it. But that was the culture. Anybody remembers the tamarind tree? People would sit around a tamarind tree and they would play the knock rummy and stuff like that there. Sometimes the police would come and things of that nature. But that was the central area. I know many days my mother went under the tamarind tree and pulled my father from under there, playing knock rummy and stuff like that as well. So that is the cultural area. And like the caller said, we need to preserve, those sections of Georgetown. Those pockets, they still need to be preserved. The Scranton area, the Rock Hole area, the Windsor Park areas, we have to preserve them. Otherwise, this whole Georgetown is going to become a concrete jungle.
I agree. And just to add to what you said, there's so many extra benefits that are available from us going down the whole path of preserving this area for cultural, for memorial purposes, and from community purposes. Dr. Frank Macfield and I were speaking just yesterday. Matter of fact, I think I have a lunch meeting with him today. I don't want to forget that. He was talking about the urbanization and the community involvement with urban areas. And the truth be told, what can then transpire for the benefit of the commercial elements is if you created that park environment, one that is attractive for people to come to. You have the Cricket Square right on one side, and you have Capital One on one side, and you have the Civil Service right on the other side. You can create a park that is inviting, that people usually on their lunch break jump in the car and drive. By the time they finish driving, they got to be back at work. I can see that area easily turning into that place that you want to go sit down neath the tree, get a little bit of cool breeze, potentially a little small minor coffee shop outside. One of the things I really appreciate when I go to the UK, because my wife is from England, is just going to one of their parks and just do nothing. Just let the wind and the skies move and just relax. And I think that what's what we need, and I think this is an opportunity for that, because you save our memories and another part, we save the memories of what happened, what transpired there. But the people, the residents in the area who are still immediately in the area are mostly seniors at this stage. Much of the younger kids, there are some kids still there, but most of the younger kids are now grown and moved out or don't use the park in its sense of basketball and the swing sets and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's more seniors there. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I wanted to do, and I promised that I would try to advocate and fight for, is a senior citizens center where they can go and sit and communicate and catch up on old times, and it's open on a regular basis rather than a one-time event. Just because after you retire and you're doing nothing, you go, well, boy, where's my friend John or Susan? And I see her in so long. And you can just go there and harbor and communicate and hang out and reminisce on old times. And that helps persons in their senior age to continue to have something to survive and fight for. Because one thing I don't like is when persons get a certain age, society kind of pushes them out in the corner to say, okay, stay at home and slowly come to your passing. You know how much value there is in those silver linings of their hair? The knowledge, I think it's an area. I would love to create a little a community area where seniors gather, where I can take some of these young people and say, go spend a couple hours over there. You might learn something. And I think that's the opportunity. There's so many opportunities from this if the government, the community, and I, the representative, gather hands together and say, let's make something special out of this. And I really believe it's going to happen. And like you said, I don't want the article in the paper or any media house make it to be between difficulties by me being an independent and the government. It's bigger than us. And I'm willing to do whatever I have to do as a representative to assist the government and getting that done. And I think they feel the same. At least I hope they feel the same.
I just received a WhatsApp message, and this individual says good morning. OC, government was given the first chance to purchase this property by another realtor. And I'm just putting out.
So sorry, hold on, because that's a very serious thing you said, at least what I understand.
Yeah,
so that
and I have no way of verifying it, but it says that government was given the first chance to purchase this property by another realtor.
You realize that the dynamics of the situation has tremendously changed. If I find out that if that is factual, and I better hold back my emotions in respect to that for now, until I can clarify that. But if I understand that government had the opportunity to purchase it first, and said no, and then this is why it's on the open market now, I'm not going to be a happy camper.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to a commercial break now, Ms. Susan. Do we have any calls? No calls. We're going to our last commercial break for the morning. Please stay tuned for the record. It'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, MLA, who represents the constituency of Georgetown Central in our Legislative Assembly. Our first discussion had to do with the governor, his visits in particular in the Georgetown Central area or other parts of Georgetown as well, and talked a little bit about the National Security Council, his commitment to fighting crime and things of that nature. So I'm going to pass the mic back over to you, Mr. Bryan, so that you can talk about some of the things that are important to you as well.
Thank you, OC, again. So yes, in the last, right before the commercial break, we were talking about the governor. I want to move on now to the other topic I want to talk about today, which is the Georgetown Central Scranton Community Park, which I think most people might have heard by now, is currently up for sale. I since recently had a public meeting on Monday night. to discuss the way forward. And I'm pleased to give some level of announcement that through my communication with government, not directly, but by way of indirect communication through the media, because I've yet to directly speak with the premier or his cabinet or his caucus about the matter, other than them saying that they're trying to deal with it. So I wrote a letter to the caucus, basically asking them to consider the park and to purchase it because it's up for sale. And I want to say, I take this opportunity to thank the homeowner, the landowner, and the family for allowing the residents and the Georgetown Central Scranton Committee for using that park for over 20 to 25 years now as a park for community purposes and events. A lot of us may know that that's the main area that they go for Christmas parties, for Mother's Day, Father's Day, and all those little events. We love to go get the little good old Caymanian food in Georgetown Central. So I want to say thank you to the family for that.
Can I ask,
yeah.
What's the size of the property itself?
1.25. 0.25. So a quarter of an acre. Yes.
Okay.
At least that's what I saw based on a report done by the Compass, because I haven't got an official sizing. I spoke to the realtor the very first day I found out about it, which was last week Friday, and she was giving me the square footage, but at the time I don't think she gave me the exact amount. She says I think she was saying it was around a quarter of an acre.
And the asking price?
I don't want to be quoted for this, and I was hoping not to get into the buying and selling because it could hurt the negotiations.
You don't want to attract
yeah. So rather not.
Was reasonable.
Yeah,
yeah. Could be reached. You could reach deeper.
Yeah. I think the government can find the funds would be the answer. But yeah, so it's 1.25 of an acre.
No,
and
0.25.
2.25. Thank you, OC. 0.25 of an acre, but the size of it is not as much of an issue as it is as the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into it by the community. Because actually, I'm so happy that we had the public meeting on Monday and persons from the community came out, and I want to thank everybody who did come to the meeting. We had an opportunity for the residents to express themselves and talk about the importance of the park to everybody in the area. And I didn't know that. I thought the park was built by fundraisers, persons outside the community, helping the area. But come to find out, particularly the Ramon family, actually over the weekends and stuff like that and days off, sat and mixed that cement by hand and slowly poured that slab. For the kids in that area, because how the park idea came up was that obviously a lot of people were driving through the area really fast in their cars, and the kids were there, and they said, we need an area where probably kids can play safely, and they just did the old Caymanian way. They say, well, why don't we ask the family that owns that piece of property, if they're not using it, can they allow us to use it? And they said yes, like the good old Caymanian kind was, and eventually, slowly but surely, the Ramon family did the community feel that they've always done. And I want to say thank you so much to that family and the committee members who've given so much to Georgetown Central. They're so vital to the community effort in Georgetown Central, right? And the Seymour family particularly. I think it's those two families together that's been hand in hand in keeping that community alive. Anyway, that being said, they started it, got permission from the landowner, and slowly but surely this fund raises cakes and sandwiches like you've always heard, and built it to the way it is. Now, for some who've seen the pictures probably on the news, on Facebook, they say, well, the park isn't as established as others, and the presentation of it isn't as great and with new facilities like others, nice bathrooms and swing sets and greatly paved and landscaped. But the reason for that is, and I've heard this over a long period of time with the committee, is that because it was privately owned before, the difficulty in finding fundraising, because people are not going to say, you go to a private company and say, I'll give you $25,000 to help upgrade the place. If
and
it's
you don't have
and you don't have control ownership, because the money could be lost the very next day. So that's at least one of the positives out of a potential negative situation, is that if it is up for sale and the government does acquire it, what can then happen is the committee of Georgetown Central Scranton now can get that permission from government to say, okay, we are now in control of it. We'll have it for at least a period of time. And that will be the next step for me, going to government and asking them, say, can you give me a lease agreement for 10 years or something like that? Because I don't think they don't have any development plans going through there, at least in the immediate future. So they can at least give them a timeline of some sort of lease agreement. Right?
What is the likelihood? Because I did see when your video talking about it. What is the likelihood of business entities in that area wanting to acquire that for additional parking? Is there going to be some competition between the
government and private sector
in terms of that? And would you have gotten any feedback from the realtor in terms of the interests expressed so far?
Well, the realtor obviously is going to try their very endeavor best to get the best price for their client, which is the right thing to do. I mean, they're in a business. But hence the reason, my immediacy about the matter, to get government to act fast. As we know, that piece of property is adjacent to a large building, their Capital One place, and adjacent to their parking lot. And they actually have parking across the street, and they're renting from other places because they don't have enough parking. So obviously that would have been a great opportunity for them to go ahead and try to purchase this property, expand their parking ability. So hence the reason I had to put the public pressure or public awareness of it right away, because I was worried that as soon as they found out, or potentially anybody else who is an investor found out, they would go ahead and try to scoop it up. It's a prime piece of real estate, I must say that. I wanted government to try to acquire it right away.
But it wouldn't be good PR for any good corporate citizen,
yes,
to want to purchase that, knowing quite well that the residents in that area want to acquire that somewhere or the other, want the government to acquire it so that they could continue to use it for the purposes that they would continue. So it would show some corporate greed on the part of anyone now trying to reach out to purchase that over government, or not giving the government or some other private entity who may seek to purchase it for the continued use of the community.
Yeah, well, you highlight a very good, important point, and I hope that many of those persons are listening to that, because I don't think they want that kind of reputation. Right. So I think there's a little bit of leverage there. And I think that one of the things I was explaining to the residents in the area is I hope my choice of words are the best, but apply the necessary pressure or request to the leadership of the country right now to acquire that. Because if we can uplift that park, potentially expand it, because it's adjacent to other government properties as well. There's so many opportunities from way of, we can sell things down there. Food is a big thing. And the second part is, if we develop that park, it brings everybody's land value up, which is something that actually triggered in a lot of people's mind. Go, oh, yeah. So uplift that, and then change the value of the land.
We have one caller. Let's take that caller before we go to our next commercial break. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yeah, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Quick question there, Kenneth. I'm not familiar with the area, not overly familiar with the lot that you guys are speaking of. I know it a little bit. Question of that area in a whole could do with a bit of an uplift or facelift to try to bring the area up. There's other areas in the back there that, an enhancement is needed. Maybe better lighting, better facilities, because to try to persuade unscrupulous behavior that happens in that area. How much do you think this park contributes to that factor?
You mean contributes to it in a negative way?
In a negative way, as giving another open lot.
No, I'm happy to say that this particular part does not contribute to it in any way. There's a code in Georgetown Central, that an unspoken code about that park. When it was built, everybody in the community knew that was one area you cannot go to. You can't go there and smoke. You can't go there and drink. And it's almost like it's accepted by those who are even willing to do criminality. They just don't go to that part. They know that that's off limits.
Sacred.
It's a sacred grounds. So you may know of potential areas in the central area where persons who are doing things that are not so pleasant are hanging about, but it's not on that lot or anywhere close to it. But the government owns another 2 lots next to it, and I think if they purchase the first one and expand, what we can do is there's a resident code in Georgetown Central, and those who were wrongdoers know the code. There's certain areas that they go to, and they know that the seniors in that area would lash out on them for taking their negative behavior to a positive area, and they respect that code. At least that we have, and I appreciate that. So I don't think that this park has any negative contribution to some of the perceived negatives that happen in Georgetown Central. Matter of fact, they actually happen more out on the road front rather than in the back, and a lot of people don't realize that.
All right. Well, thanks for that clarification. Let me just say I'll throw you my support behind this endeavor that you're with, especially if it's going to benefit the people of Georgetown Central. I also like to suggest to you that maybe your council can take over the management of this area and the whole Georgetown Central on the whole, just to improve. So, by 2021, we want to see that area as the gold standard for Georgetown. Thanks a lot, Kenneth. Best of luck in the endeavors, man.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I'll just quickly add that because I know we have to go to break. The Georgetown Central Scranton Committee is already formulated. They're already doing an amazing job. I think that if it's acquired, it's a great opportunity now to expand, and they have more strength now to do more. They were limited because of the privately owned element I was discussing before. And trust me, I believe if government acquires this, we can do exactly what you just said, is uplift the whole community. The potentials are endless.
So the Scranton committee, they're legally established. They're in a position, for instance, to go to government if government were to acquire it for them, or government were to acquire it and say, okay, can we now have it for a peppercorn lease over a given period of time for us to use it for community activities? It can be for 33 years or whatever, because I think there's a way around. Anything over a certain period of time has to go to the Legislative Assembly to be approved. But it can also be done if, for instance, you wanted to preserve that for generations to come. It can be done in 33-year increments so that you avoid having to go to the Legislative Assembly.
Yes.
I'm familiar with that because it was one of the entities that I'm involved in. That's how we were able to do it. So we got a lease, peppercorn lease for 33 years, renewable for 2 more 33-year period up to 99 years to get around having to go through the laborious process of getting to the Legislative Assembly and having them approve it there.
Well, I tell you what, I think that even if it went to the Legislative Assembly, I don't think people would question it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem, but the time
it's an easier
that it would
process.
take.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll say this. Unfortunately, at the moment, the Georgetown Central Scranton Community Committee does not have a non-profit agreement yet. They actually are in the process of doing that as we speak, because there were some other project ideas that I had once I was elected that I wanted to do. Some other properties in the areas for sale. Unfortunately, we couldn't get an agreement for those sales because I want to uplift the area in other ventures, but they didn't happen. So we were already in the process of trying to get ourselves legal in respect to a nonprofit. So hopefully by the time the government resolves this purchase, that we would be at that stage that we can then do the negotiations of a peppercorn lease.
Okay, folks, we're going to take a commercial break. When we return, the conversation will continue with MLA Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Please stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're in the last leg of our show this morning, so I want to throw the mic back over to Mr. Kenneth Bryan. He'll have about 12, 13 minutes to talk about some other things if he wants to speak about as well.
Yes.
But before you do that, just one of our listeners have written in and asking about the light in Savannah by the Savannah Primary School. And they say the light is flashing, which means the light, I think the flashing light that they're talking about would be the light that is located
right before the school and after the school.
And before and after, those yellow lights. And when those are flashing, you're supposed to reduce your speed to 15 miles an hour. But the person says they're waiting to cross the road, but no traffic is stopping. And I'm wondering whether or not we need to have one of those push button lights, like what we have down here by the government administration building, where when you push that button, the traffic stops because the light is red at that point in time, and whether or not we need to have that control there for that purpose, bearing in mind that crosswalk is probably used more frequently when school is beginning and school is ending, as opposed to the rest of the day. But even during those peak periods when it is being used, to have some sort of a button there that will turn the light red when there's a pedestrian wanting to cross.
Yeah, I think it's going to be some complications for that, because from a traffic flow perspective, that is a 3-lane position. So I think there's 2 lanes either coming from East coming town when you're passing the school, and one going in. It comes right before you come to that roundabout. So putting a push button system there would put a level of hindrance to the constant flow that is expected to happen there around about. But I understand the safety perspective, because it is right next to a school, and there's many residents whose children live across the street, literally across the street. There's a lot of residents in development there, so I can see the difficulty. I think that probably if there's a growing level of persons who just need to pass over across the street to get home, or to be on the other side of the road for bus services and stuff like that, they may actually have to consider an overpass, because having a push button system there, just based on, I have no scientific evidence of this, but just based on my simple common sense and the traffic flow frequency.
But why do we always have to defer to the vehicular traffic? It's like everything on the road is built around the cars and the trucks and the motorcycles.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
And the pedestrians and the bicycle riders are thought of as secondary.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, we have to sometimes consider and give priority, first priority to the pedestrians and others as well.
I agree. I just know that the argument is going to be is this whole traffic congestion thing. I mean, we're trying to alleviate so much traffic congestion now. But these times that we're speaking of are not really high peak traffic times, particularly because outside of the one in the morning, the one in the evening, it shouldn't be too much of an issue because there's not loads of high traffic level around the 3. The high traffic peaks is from like 7 in the morning till 8:39, and from the 5 o'clock hour up to probably 7. But a topic that I would be happy to talk about with my colleague, Mr. Alva Saku, for him to consider. OC, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the show this morning. I think we covered some pretty positive things. I want to take this opportunity to remind the public that I am having a public meeting at the Georgetown Town Hall on the 24th of May. 24th of April, 24th of April at the Georgetown Town Hall. It starts at 7 o'clock. Myself and some other individuals who've come together to assist me with finding conclusions and solutions to the continued foreclosure problem in the Cayman Islands have been meeting regularly. Matter of fact, we met up to last night. And I'm happy to say that we're coming to some good foundation on suggestions that is necessary to take an effect on the foreclosure market. And I also, before, when I said to everybody I was fed up with this, I actually a couple of weeks back I just got on Facebook and said I'm fed up with this now. I campaigned on it. The government doesn't want to seem to do anything about it, so I'm going to do something. So I'm on that track right now, and I must say that at that time when I decided that I'm going to do something, there wasn't a strategy or a plan. Because in government, when you're in the government side, you have the numbers to get things done. But I don't have the numbers. So I had to come up with a different political strategy of how to do that. And I must say that I feel confident now that when people come on the 24th of April to the Georgetown Town Hall, they'll see that the outlay of plan and research that I've done could be something that they can get behind and say, okay, I'm going to move forward with this. I think this is a way forward to actually ultimately get a good reform to mortgage structure in the country, because we're not talking about just one legislation or one area of the problem. I'm talking about we need really a reform to the mortgage circumstances in this country, because it's so multifaceted and problematic that there's no one area in home ownership and mortgage and foreclosures that need to be fixed. There's numbers of different areas. Just to give you an example, the evaluators, that's another thing that's in the news. The fact that we have the contracts that banks give out are not really mortgages, they're more demand loans. We need regulation about that. We have persons who, we don't have a entity that regulates foreclosures, period, to track them to see if there's any irregularities. We have persons who are actually on work permit, don't have a trade and business license, who are purchasing these homes as a profit, and you actually need a trade and business license for that. And there's no enforcement mechanisms there. We have situations like, say, for instance, the courts actually are not the mediator in respect to foreclosures. They're only the overseer of a contract and what the contract stipulates. So you may think, oh, we're talking about mortgages and homes and what's right and what's wrong. They don't get involved in that. They're only there to make sure that whatever was stated in that contract that you sign is actually followed through. So and then you have this whole element of residual mortgage payments where persons' homes are being taken, but they're still owing the bank. That there needs structural change there. So you need regulation. We need a reform to the legislation. We need an oversight body to manage persons who were involved in foreclosures, because sadly, I believe there's a lot of potentially what I would call corrupt practices within the process. So we've discussed all the negative areas within the foreclosure process from start to finish, and then we had some suggestive solutions and also some preventative measures of not having foreclosures in the first place. So I plan to present all of those and the research and findings behind it, and then also present a strategy moving forward from a political perspective, that though I am a single one vote in the Legislative Assembly, I think there's a way that we can bring this to Parliament to ultimately get government to agree to potential good reform in respect to the mortgage process, and reduce these foreclosures and give more protection and balance to all parties involved in respect to loans and mortgages for Caymanians and the banks. Okay. So that being said, thank you so much, OC, for the opportunity to come on. I hope that the next time I'm on,
still have a little more time.
All right. So
that was indicating
yeah.
Still have.
The next time I come on, I hope to have, which is 2 weeks from now, and I think today being the 11th. I'll be back on the 25th. Yeah. So that will be the day after my political meeting, because my political meeting is on a Tuesday.
Okay.
So we'll have a lot to talk about that morning in respect to what happens that night. Sadly, there was one comment that came in earlier in respect to the Georgetown Central Park. I am going to make sure that after this show to follow up with some investigations into that. I hope that that's not the case based on what you said earlier.
And the thing is that the person didn't indicate when that offer was made to. That could have been recently. It could have been months ago or years ago as well. Good. So we're not sure, when that period of time was. Yeah. What I would say with that, though, is that, and I know that there are government departments that are listening to the show, is that we do know that there's a valuation section or whatever within the Lands and Survey Department. We know that persons in the past have had issues with them in relation to the valuation of property and what government wants to offer. Now, we expect, or we would hope, that the seller of this property is looking for fair market value on it. What is fair market value, considering the location and everything that it is in, and considering the interest that other persons or entities may have in that property. But just to say that entity within government who will make the recommendation in terms of what government should be paying for that property, do not try to nickel and dime the owners of that property. Make sure that they get fair value for it, because there are persons in the Cayman Islands who feel that those individuals who work in those agencies who may not necessarily be Caymanians don't want to see Caymanians benefit by getting a little profit for their property as
they should. It's their
wanting to nickel and dime them. So those of you out there who are listening over in the government administration building, please take that into consideration.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I think any homeowner has that right to say, listen, if you don't want to agree to that, then I'm going to go private, because there's private individuals out there who will be willing to pay the market value for it. I don't think any Caymanian, or matter of fact, any person for that fact, should be undermined in their property for the purposes of government. The landowner deserves, at the very least, market value. So I'm going to reserve any more discussions about that. I want to give the government their opportunity to go ahead and do the negotiations, because the more we talk about it, it can influence the dynamics of the negotiation. So I wish them all the luck, and I really hope that they can find that agreement soon, so we, the members of Georgetown Central and the residents in that area, can get started to a new future in respect to the park and revitalizing particularly that community, but also potentially come up with a plan and a dream and a vision moving forward for the whole of Georgetown, potentially with a national park being in that area.
And please encourage the Scranton Central Committee to get themselves legally established, so that they're well positioned, that they can take up the mantle and move things forward. Once that has been achieved as well. Mr. Briner, again, I want to thank you for making yourself available this morning and for creating such an interesting show in terms of the topics that we have chosen and the listener participation that we have received as well. And I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to take this opportunity to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who is less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station. Join Sterling, Dwayne Banks at 12 noon for a talk today. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.